And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players, an MLS podcast. As you can see, I'm alone today because after 3 whole days of spending time together in person for the first time in months, Connor got so sick of me he needed some time off. But that does not stop the grind of the MLS news cycle. There are rumors flying around all over the place for players in and out of MLS clubs, and we also have to touch a little bit on the Messi and Alba All-Star Game drama. I'm Andrew, and here is this week's MLS news. And what I want to do, let's start with Scarf of the Week, of course, as we do. I'm kind of rocking everything today. So I've got a Vancouver 86er scarf, because that'll be one of the things we talk about in terms of transfers. I'm also rocking the Red Bull bucket hat, because it was the closest hat I had, but also a soccer jersey. I don't usually rock the soccer jersey, but here we are. Maybe a nod to Connor there because he's usually the jersey guy, but we move. But I want to start a little bit with the All-Star game because this was the big news that broke right as we were heading up to our get together. So we weren't able to share our thoughts on it in the moment, but just a couple of notes here, right? Because in America, the All-Star game is commonplace. It is a natural stopping point in the middle of the season. Teams get a break, and the best players in the league, they come together, they showcase their talents in these little skill games and an exhibition game, and it's all a good bit of fun. And MLS is no different, right? They highlight their best players. They want them to play in this game to show, look at the talent that we have in the league against other clubs, this time in Liga MX's All-Stars. And they have a rule where if you get voted in, you have to play or you will get a 1 game suspension. It's very out of the norm for the global soccer fan and the global soccer player. However, every player knows, or they should know, that this clause exists in the contract that they signed. However, this year, a few Inter Miami stars chose, and actually they were told by their club that they were not going to participate in this game. Lionel Messi and Jordi Alba both sat it out on the sidelines, and for their troubles, they earned a 1 game suspension. While this sparked outrage in the community by Messi lovers around the globe, we figured it's time to give our 2 cents. And by we, I mean me, because Connor's not here. So starting with Messi missing the All-Star game and what it means, right? Is it a bad look for the league? I think there are 2 sides to this, as there always usually are, right? Because first off, there's always the type of the debate where what type of DP are you going to bring in, right? The ever-present concern is that you're going to get somebody, and I'll use Shaqiri as the example in Chicago, that is going to think that they're bigger than the league. They're going to walk around and create a paycheck. They're going to skip out on all the things they don't want to do, and they're going to cast a terrible light on the league that the Euro snobs and the MLS or anti-MLS crowd are just going to eat up and use for days and days and days in terms of content. And Messi skipping this game treads into that territory a bit, right? This league signed you, and as you know, you knew this coming in to be I'll use the term ambassador to the game, right? They were heavily reliant on elevating the league presence off of your massive stature, Lionel Messi's that is. And for him to not play in this game kind of looks like a big red flag on the surface, right? He goes about it saying, oh, I don't want to play because it doesn't matter to me, and it's all about me because I'm Lionel Messi. It's not about the league. And we're not going to cover whether the All-Star game should or shouldn't be a thing. That's not really for here or there right now. That might be something we get into later, but it won't be in this specific episode. So, save your comments, please. But it came out later that Jorge Mas admitted that they were told not to participate. The club owners told them not to play in this game. You're not going to go. And this takes it a step further for me, and this is where my worries come in, because now you have owners who have had every exception made for them to have this team that they have at the moment, right? The Rodrigo de Paul, the Messi, Suarez, Alba, Busquets, right? These bringing in Messi in and of itself, finding a clever way to get that done. Everything was done to make sure that this team can get put together. Now this owner is outwardly telling his players to break the rules that are in their contract because either one, they think they can get away with it because they're bigger than everybody else, or two, they don't care about the rules and they think that they should be able to do whatever they want. Now, this is particularly concerning to me, especially from a team that has already been broken down and been punished for breaking roster rules just a few years back, right? Their first year in the league. This team is now compiling what many see as a super team and are already being labeled with this, oh, they don't have to follow the rules level and stuff like this. And I don't think that they're out there breaking rules, but now you have this guy coming out here and saying, no, we're intentionally telling people not to do the things that they're contractually obligated to do. It emphasizes this point of they don't follow the rules that could lead to a bigger problem, right? So if you think about it, if you're in a league where spending rules are so important, right? You have owners that signed on to these rules and said, yeah, we're gonna abide by these rules, we're gonna follow along, and we're gonna spend within limits outside of a certain set number of players, and that's gonna be it. So we all, we're all invested in the same pot. Now you've got these owners who are outwardly defying the rules. I'm not gonna follow them because I think they're stupid. Well, if one person can do that, why can't another billionaire do that, right? Why can't Arthur Blank go out and spend on 7 DPs because he just doesn't think that the 3 DPs are a good rule anymore? Or why doesn't maybe one of the LA teams, right? Ricky Puig got hurt. Oh well, we're full on DP slots, but all 3 of my DPs got hurt, so I'm gonna go sign 2 more. What are you gonna do? You're gonna find me? You can't stop me, is kind of the vibe that this is coming out as. If you can't control them based off of a set rules that everybody agrees on, you're setting yourself up for a really big spiral out of a control in a league like MLS where spending keeps all owners interested and happy and prevents infighting and all this sort of other stuff. But what it's setting itself up to be on the surface is that there are owners who are basically saying, if I don't agree with your rules, I'm going to do what I want anyway. And that to me is super concerning because that is how you then spiral out into everybody just go spend whatever you want and see what happens. And we saw what happened when the NASL did that. It's definitely more concerning from that point of view than any other point of view for me right now in terms of this All-Star game fiasco. That being said, when Messi and Alba decided that they weren't going to show up, like we mentioned, they were suspended, and they were suspended for a crucial FCC matchup. And was this the right decision? I said this on Twitter, and I'll say it here as well. 2 things can be true. First, I believe it was absolutely the right decision. We saw it happen to Zlatan. We saw it happen to a bunch of other stars who chose not to do this. The club told them to break the rules, and they got punished for it. I don't have an issue with that. They knew what they were doing when they got into it. They chose to make this decision, and they are paying for their decision. No problem with that at all. And that is regardless of whether you think the All-Star game should exist or not, or if it's a stupid game, it's an exhibition, it doesn't matter. It's so American, it doesn't need to be there, blah, 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 blah. Don't care. And likewise, if you say, oh, if they were playing in Cincinnati, they wouldn't have suspended them because then they would have lost all their merch. I don't think so. But that's obviously anybody's opinion. I'm not going to sit here and try and argue with you on that. At the end of the day, the rules are the rules and they enforce them. I've got no problem with that. That being said, it can also be true that the rule is antiquated and it needs to be reanalyzed for the modern game, right? So one of the examples I had put out there was in MLB, players opt out of the home run derby. In the NBA, they're like, nope, I'm not doing the dunk contest anymore. In MLS, maybe we can get to a point where we can find that happy medium, right? So, and we're going to get into Jorge Massa's comments here in a second, but schedule congestion's the big thing, right? In the NBA, it's less about, it's more about having fun in the NBA and less about the competition. In the MLB, you're not really doing a lot of heavy exertion in your body. In soccer, it's a different story, right? So, for example, maybe we get to a point where you say, okay, if we are at July and you've played over 25, 30 games already, you get a pass because you need a break, right? Or X number of minutes, or you have to decide by a certain time if you want to go or not. Just different levels of, we can't keep putting people through exertion physically if they aren't physically ready to do it. If that makes sense, I hope it does. Maybe you have them skip out on the skills competition. You make a cameo in the All-Star game, 30 minutes or whatever, and just go on out. I don't know what the answer is, but there definitely should be a way to balance this out. The last part of it too is I think that you need to have a set deadline of when you are or are not going to play, right? If you are going to give them this opt-out clause, whether they get there or not, you have to have a deadline because you can't just have Messi show up and be like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm not coming, and then take up, Alba as well, and then take up 2 spots that somebody else might have really, really wanted to have to play in front of their fans or to play in their first All-Star game or to be a part of it with players that are, on this DP level of whatever. You can't just allow 2 players to just say, I don't feel like showing up today, because that's not fair to anybody else. So after this decision was made, Jorge Mas then came out and went on a little tirade about this decision to suspend them, and he made these following comments. I'm just going to break them down here because it was a 20-minute press conference that he kind of went through and fielded questions about it. But basically, first off, he uses the MLS, which we know basically makes all of his points invalid. I'm just kidding. But he emphasized that he wanted them to rest as a club decision. So it wasn't just Miami, or it wasn't just Messi and Alba saying, I don't really want to play. The club basically told them, yeah, you're going to rest. You're not going to play in this game, and we'll deal with the repercussions later. Which again tells me that maybe they thought they could just get away with it and be like, oh, well, Messi's bigger than you, which is something that he brings up later in his comments. But he claims that the rules for a one-game suspension are not a good rule because it makes players choose between an exhibition and a regular season match. So essentially saying he either would have had to play in Austin, or rather, excuse me, he would rather have to skip out on Austin and then miss FCC, or he'd have to skip out on the game against Red Bull and not play in the All-Star game, which is very much not true. There was nothing about it that said you have to miss the game before to play in the All-Star game. That's a little bit of a stretch there, I think, Mr. Moss. But we'll get into some of those comments in a second. He then calls the rule draconian, right? Which is, I think, a very crazy exaggeration for what happened here. You missed a game. And then he brings up the schedule congestion, which is a fair gripe, right? Don't get me wrong, but let's not forget that he's also part of the ownership group in MLS that voted to bring Leagues Cup in, where you're throwing an extra, couple of games into this competition where you didn't need to put it there in the first place, right? So I don't think they're in a position to complain, much like the many times that we pointed out during the US Open Cup fiasco, where schedule congestion is a monster of your own creation. You cannot cry foul when it comes back to attack you. So when you're sitting here saying, "Oh, we need Messi to take a break from the All-Star game because of schedule congestion," the schedule is congested for a lot of different reasons, but it's not because of one game in the All-Star game, right? You've got the Club World Cup, which took up a lot of time of your own time, right? You've got now a bunch of games that are backfilled because you got 3 games to make up. Fine. You've got the Champions League you were in. You've got, the Leagues Cup you're going to play in just coming up here in the next couple of weeks. But it's very, very interesting to me that it always falls back on schedule congestion. And this is something that came up with the Open Cup. It always falls back on schedule congestion, only when it hurts them, never when it hurts somebody else, right? And then he really hangs up on this idea of having him play an extra game in the All-Star game. And he had to play an extra game in Austin. He played at Red Bull. He would have played at Austin. He'd have to play it at FCC. He would have played 30 minutes max, guys. Yeah, you can complain like he would have had to travel from New York to Austin, back to Cincinnati, and what have you. Sure. No doubt about it. The travel is tough, but it's tough on everybody. But you can't sit here and say, "Oh, playing in the All-Star game for 30 minutes would have killed him for Cincinnati." I don't believe that. And then there was a question that came out about his comment, or if this decision would impact his relationship with the league or his extension talks, which first I think is a strange way to phrase a question mere hours after the decision, right? It almost feels like it was like a softball for him to line up and give a soundbite, if you will. Right? He mentions that there's a chance that this incident, which, basically Jordi Alba and Messi were so very upset that they got suspended from a game against FC Cincinnati in the middle of July, that Messi's just not going to resign a new contract because that's how much he wanted to play in the FCC game. I'm not buying that. This feels very much like let's get the media to think that the league is going to make a bad decision, lose out on Miami, or lose out on Messi in Miami for another 2 years, and everybody will hate the league, and everybody will support Miami's handling of the situation, and they'll feel better about it in the press. I don't at all believe that a single game suspension is going to ruin Messi's chances of coming back, if he's going to come back at all, because he still needs to be playing for the World Cup. So I'm not buying that one. He then goes on to say a couple of other things when asked about, like, hey, why didn't you rest Messi? Because you're talking about schedule congestion. He's played 90 minutes for the past every game. And he goes, oh, when Messi's on the field, he's going to play 90 minutes. Okay, well, then you're not worried about schedule congestion then, because you're playing him 90 minutes every game, right? And I'm not saying you have to rest him, but you can't complain about schedule congestion if you're not handling schedule congestion properly. I'm not gonna sit here and listen to you complain about, and this goes to any manager, right? Oh, the schedule is congested, and we have not enough time to rest, not enough time to rest. And you got players on your bench that you can rotate in when you're up 5-1 against Red Bull, and not have to run him out for another 90 minutes. Right. Again, it's all on their own creation, and this goes for a lot of MLS owners, by the way. So I'm not just focusing on them here, but there are ways to improve this, and we've talked about this a little bit, where you don't have to, you don't have to stick with this just because we've always done it. We can make it better. And the first thing was just the scheduling of the All-Star game, right? Do we need to put it on a Wednesday between two games in the middle of July? Can we take a weekend right before Leagues Cup, right? We're no longer taking a month off for Leagues Cup, so Leagues Cup starts on a Tuesday, right? This year on the by the time you're watching this, it'll already be started. Why not play it on the Saturday before and then start Leagues Cup on a Wednesday? Right? It's the same thing. Everybody gets a break off and then you play, right? It's not that hard, and maybe you do it that way, right? Because Jorge Mas mentioned it too, right? 48 hours after the All-Star game, there were six games being played in MLS. So to say that you're looking out for player safety and you're worried about the overload, but then to do something like that, I'm not sure he doesn't have a fair point there. Now, how many players in the All-Star game were negatively impacted by the six games being played directly after? I don't know. And what does that 30-minute appearance or 45-minute appearance do for the readiness of those games? I don't know. Right. But I'm sure you can slide that in as being an issue. But at the end of the day, for me, I do think that there needs to be some sort of clause or game limit that can allow you to opt out, right? Jorge Mas's biggest point was at the end of the day we need to prioritize the league over exhibitions, and I agree. I don't disagree with him there, but I do also agree that the All-Star game has a place in this league. And it has a place in sports culture, right? If you think back to it, and this was a conversation we had on Twitter with a couple of fans who made a very, very good point that the All-Star game is not for the adults who have been watching this league for 10 years. The All-Star game is for the kids, 7, 8, 9, 10, to see their favorite players and the best players in the league ball out and have a great time, but also to see, oh man, this guy's actually really good. I should keep an eye on him and know the league better, right? When you were a kid, the All-Star game and the Home Run Derby were must-watch events in the MLB, right? I mean, I remember getting home from soccer training and sitting down with my dinner and watching the Home Run Derby because it was electric. The dunk contest and the three-point shot, you have to be there, right? It is so much fun. It's so energetic and it's different. It's not just game after game after game. The skills challenge can be that in the MLS All-Star game, and I think it could be really fun. Again, I've made it clear it's not really for me, but again, I'm 28. I'm not the desired audience for an All-Star game. But I do think it has a place in this league. They just have to find the balance for it. So that's my take on the All-Star game. Please let me know what you think, and we'll get Connor's thought as well. But I want to finish up on the Messi talk here with this idea of Messi's role in MLS and being an ambassador, because there's this growing commentary around the league that, what has Messi actually done for MLS? He doesn't do any press conferences. He doesn't do any adverts or anything like that. He just does one beer commercial and goes on. I could not care less if Lionel Messi is doing a monthly advertisements or using the general, oh yeah, MLS is a great league clip. Don't care. This is not the type of player who wins eyeballs to the league with press conferences and sound bites. That was Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who was a great player in his own right, but he drew more eyes to the league via his personality than he did his game, right? People watch because, oh, look at Zlatan saying, Carlos Vela is a sheep and he's a lion, or MLS is bad pay to play. All these sound bites got people to talk about MLS. People talk about MLS with Messi because of what he's doing and how he's playing. I don't think you need him in front of a camera every 24 seconds to make some sort of statement to get people to look here. However, the question is, has Messi done anything in MLS in terms of its brand and its global recognition? And I think undoubtedly the answer is yes. With the Apple TV deal and the growing eyes from the product, with the Apple TV deal and the growing eyes on the league product, you got more people involved, knowing about the league, as Inter Miami as a whole, people talking about MLS. Could it have been more? Maybe, right? Would it have been more with press conferences and commercials? I don't think so. I don't think anybody's turning on a TV, especially with MLS behind Apple TV, and saying, "Oh, Messi came and said MLS is a tough league, and maybe I should watch it because he says that." I don't think that's going to change the game because that's not who Messi was. Messi never got people to look because he was making comments about where he was or who he was playing against. He did it because he's the best player in the world. I've had this feeling for a while now that this idea that we're competing with or going to compete with European leagues either now or in 10 years is just crazy. And it's not because we aren't good enough or we're not talented enough or we're not developing players or we're not marketed well enough or we're not buying enough players. None of that matters. To me, it's because of culture and history that takes generations to change. You have to remember the Club World Cup, where we saw Brazilian teams absolutely running through anybody who was in their path. And all you saw were excuses, right? Oh, well, it's preseason for the Europeans and they didn't even care and blah 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 blah, right? There is a whole generation of American soccer fans who have been conditioned to believe that Europe is the best and that no one will ever dethrone the king in the game of soccer. Now, whether that's true or not, I'm not gonna sit here and try and defend it. I do believe that they are the pole bearer. But to say that there's nobody who can ever touch them, I think is a stretch. Again, I'm not talking only the Premier League, which is instantly where everybody goes to when we talk about European soccer because that's all they ever watch, and that's okay. But the idea that MLS isn't on the same level as the lower parts of the Dutch league or the lower parts of the Belgian league, which I've seen games played there and absolutely on par with some of our top teams, right? It's all a big, big pool of information, and there are 346 different metrics you can use to say that one league's better than the other, and this metric and that metrics. But what you're not going to get, no matter how many different ways you look at it, is an entire generation of Americans who grew up in a European soccer first household trying to switch over to another club in America just because um, it's a local team or Messi said it was a good game that they played against or you went to the game to watch Messi and you saw them play. You're not getting an entire generation of those people to change. Are you going to get handfuls of people? Absolutely, and that was the whole point. But just because Messi stands up in front of a mic and says, "Yeah, Columbus Crew was a good game. They were really tough, and they were the best team we played this year," that doesn't instantly take all the Euro snobs and the anti-MLS crowd and be like, "Oh, Messi said what about Columbus? I'm going to go follow them now." It doesn't work that way. You have to be involved and really, really built into it. Like we've said before, it's not getting 100% of the people who watch Messi to be MLS fans. We've seen those people who come into the comments of MLS tweets and saying, "Oh yeah, we're only here to watch Messi. Once he leaves, we don't care about you. Nobody cares about your league and you're garbage and blah 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 blah." Right? And I'm very, very certain that an extra Messi interview every month is not going to make a difference because and I don't think that his lack of interview of availability or lack of time in front of the press is making him any less of an ambassador, like some people are saying. And the reason I say that is because while I would love for him to come out and make statements about how the league is strong and competitive and growing every year, like every other big name star has, the only and like Ronaldo has said about the Saudi league, by the way, stuff like that. If he came out and said stuff like that, the only thing you're seeing in the comments is stuff that we've said about Ronaldo, right? Oh, he's only getting paid to say that, and this is a retirement league or a money washing league, and you're gonna get the Messi fans just saying this retirement burger league is trash. Messi needs to leave ASAP, and it doesn't matter what MLS does. And Messi standing in front of a microphone is not going to change any of that on any impactful scale. You might get a few people who are like, okay, well, maybe he said that. Now I'm actually going to watch it. But for the most part, you don't have those Messi fans are not going to change. But what you're trying to do is say, okay, well, I'm going to take my kid to this game, Columbus versus Miami, and have him watch the game and say, oh, this was really fun. I want to come back. Or my daughter, or my cousin, or this or that, or whatever it may be. But just having Messi come out and say MLS is good is not going to change the opinion of an entire anti-MLS and Eurosnob fan base. And I'll leave it at that, but you can let me know. I'm sure that'll make some rounds, but that's my thoughts and I've had that thought for a while. And like I said, for me it's you have to just keep bringing people to the game, let them enjoy the atmosphere and buy into the team, get them to watch a game a month, a game every 2 weeks until they're watching it every single week and saying, yeah, this is something I want to watch every week. That's where I'm at. Alrighty then, let's go and move on a little bit to some transfers, right? We got three really big ones, three designated player rumors, and actually two designated player rumors and one confirmed. Let's start with rumors here. We're going to start in LA with LAFC, who are pushing hard for Tottenham Hotspur's Heung Min Son. It's being reported by multiple outlets, including Tommy Scoops, Ben Jacobs, and Fabrizio Romano, that LAFC are making very solid attempts at Tottenham Hotspur's Heung Min Son. The reports to this point are all very positive. Son's going to decide his future after a friendly next week. He wants to go to MLS over Saudi Arabia, and Spurs are going to let him leave if he wants to. So if we put on our theoretical tinfoil hat and we say that this gets over the line tomorrow, we need to kind of analyze how this is going to work. And I'm gonna put it out there and say that right now the rumor is between a 15 to $20 million figure for his transfer. So we're going to use that as our benchmark, right? So first off, where's he going to fit in the LAFC system? Because this is an important question. Because when Giroud came over, we were all so hyped that he was going to just pick up where he left off at Milan and he's going to go off in MLS. And we saw how that worked out. It didn't. So the question then is, how is he going to fit in the LAFC system? First off, he's playing on the opposite side of Denny Bouanga, which is going to be a ton of fun. Both of them super explosive, super fun in transition, great on the ball, and very good finishers of the ball. So very interested to see how they play off of each other if he does end up playing in that wide area, because they really have not had somebody to fill that spot since Oliveira and Bogusz left. And I know they kind of flip-flop between those positions, but this would fill that hole without a doubt, and very successfully fill that hole, in my opinion. He's still super explosive, very clean on the ball, which is exciting for the team that plays in transition, which we mentioned. However, he also has the work rate to be impactful on the defensive side of the ball, which is also a big need for this group. But overall, just to make it simple and to not hold us up too long, I think that this is going to be a better fit than Olivier Giroud ended up being. And that's regardless of where he plays, right? If he plays in the 7 or 11 role, because, whichever side he's going to be on, or if he plays in the 9 or as a second 9 or offset, I think anywhere he goes, I think he's got a lot of talent to be successful. But the question is, if the $20 million price tag is true, is he worth that much money? And at first thought, you always think, okay, well, $20 million, that's a really big number in MLS. You don't think anybody is actually going to be worth that much money. But if you look back at his numbers as a Prem, he is, everybody's talking about, oh, he's fallen off. I saw comments like, oh, yeah, he can't play at the Prem anymore. Get him out of here. Last year was the first year he didn't hit double-digit goals in the Premier League in 8 years, which is ridiculous to think about. And he still totaled 10 if you include the Europa League as well. And on top of that, he had 12 assists in that time. So it's very, very clear. And by the way, on a Spurs team that finished 17th or 16th or whatever, however low they finished, that's crazy. So he clearly still has a bunch left in the tank at just 33 years old too. You're going to see that. He's not going to show up like a 36-year-old Giroud and not fit this big high intensity system. And while 20 million might be a big number, you have to assume that there are going to be, the jersey kickbacks that come in, and his expected success would help them in tournaments, right? Prize money, whether it be Open Cup, Leagues Cup, MLS Cup, Supporter Shield, Champions League that you would expect them to qualify for. And if they get back into the Club World Cup, like all of these tournaments play a part into if this is worth it. Now, I don't think that you're going to get a complete 20 million return on investment by the time he's done in LAFC. But overall, I would say it's worth the investment. I would put this money down for somebody like Heung Min Son before he goes for a free. And now they just have to get it over the line. So it seems like it's progressing really well. And we'll see how it goes in what? 5 days, 6 days since when this comes out. We've got one more rumored transfer, and that's this guy Thomas Muller at Vancouver. So Tommy Scoops and Ben Jacobs continuing their report that Vancouver Whitecaps are finalizing a deal to bring in Thomas Muller from Bayern Munich to Canada. Now, similar to the Rodrigo de Paul deal in Miami, he's going to hit as a TAM player for the rest of 2025, and then he will go on the books as a designated player in 2026. So currently, Vancouver are cooling off from their wicked hot start, but they're still right in the thick of the race for the Supporter Shield. So they are 1 point off the top of the West and 5 points off the Shield, with a game in hand on everybody above them. So then you have to ask, is Thomas Muller the right piece for this run, not only to the Shield, but to MLS Cup deeper in the year? And I'm going to be frank with you, I'm kind of hesitant to believe that it is. Mainly because I'm not sure any team in MLS, much less Vancouver, are capable of figuring out how to use him quite like Bayern Munich did. There's always that comment, like he created his own position, right? The Roimsdauter, I don't speak German, I'm sorry. But, the guy who just kind of floats between the lines and gets in good pockets, gets the ball and picks out the right pass, right? But how is Vancouver going to figure out how to use that in their system, right? He's a different player than Pedro Vite. He's even more so different than Ryan Gauld, both of which we're not playing at the moment. But in their system, you can find Ryan Gauld and Pedro Vite in wide areas, tucking inside to receive the ball. And if they don't receive the ball inside, they're creating chances out wide and being a successful player in those spaces. Thomas Muller is not that guy. He never was that guy. He never will be that guy. He likes to be in the middle. He likes to create from the middle. And if you're going to use him in any of his most natural positions as a starter, they're either going to have to go up two up top with Brian White, or drop somebody like JC Ngando for Thomas Muller so he can play in that center attacking mid role. It'll be interesting to see how they make it work. But then you need the creative players around him to make the runs the right way, figure out how to read his mind, and support his style of play, which is different than anybody you've seen in MLS so far. And that's going to take time. Now, I think they will get there eventually. They will figure out how to utilize him. But the problem is they need the answer now, right? He can't be a David Goss theorem player where he comes in, he doesn't really do much for the first half of the season, or for the last half of this season, and then does really well next season, because they're 5 points out of the Shield right now, right? They're trying to get into the playoffs right now. So is he the piece that sets them apart for the clear and favorites for the Shield or the Cup? I don't think so. And that's not to say that he's a bad player or he's going to hurt them in some way. I just think it's going to take time for them to figure out how to use him properly. And right now, they just don't have that time. They can't afford it. So they need that instant impact, and I don't know if he gives it right now. Now, 2026 is 2026 is a different story, right? I think 2026 he will be a great player. They'll figure out how to use him, and with Ryan Gauld back, it'll be very, very fun to watch them both play. But I'm worried that he isn't the right piece right now, and that's my focus. So then we go and ask, right? The rumored salary and what put a lot of people off was he wanted $8 to $10 million. And this is where I lost my interest as well. At $8 million, he's the third highest paid player in the league now that Insigne is gone. If you give him 10, he's number 2. Those players that you're paying $8 to $10 million a year need to have instant impact that give you almost immediate return on investment that you should be able to see and justify within the first half season that you have him. And we just got done talking about how I'm not sure that he's going to be that player to make that impact. So I struggle to see how his salary demands are worth it right now. Now, I'm happy to be proven wrong here, as I always am with these takes, but I just don't see how a DP signing like this is going to line up for them, especially because of their history as designated players is really, really poor, right? They are not hitting very well outside of Ryan Gauld. They really have not hit well on designated players to this point. I mean, you look back at some of their designated players. I mean, the maybe Matthias Lava, maybe goes Pedro Morales, maybe, right? But Freddie Montero. We had Inbom Huang in 2020, Joaquin Ardaiz, nope. Ali Adnan, good player, lasted, as a left back though, a designated player as a left back. Lucas Cavallini, okay, right? And then Sergio Cordova for a year, Stuart Armstrong for 6 weeks. I mean, it's just like they don't usually hit on their designated players, and that worries me for a player that you're going to give $10 million to. And not to mention, they also need to get FCC's discovery rights from Thomas Muller, because they were obviously the first one to figure out who Thomas Muller was. And while we know that the discovery rule is crazy, it's not something we're going to discuss right now. We'll talk about it another time. But let's finish up this very, relatively short episode with the Crew's third designated player. They get him in the attack. It's signed, it's sealed, it's delivered. It's Wessam Abou Ali from Egyptian Giants Al Ahly, which comes with such an interesting story that Tommy Scoops reported, that they were actually trying to get him before the Club World Cup. And obviously Ali was not going to sell until they finished the tournament. They wanted him to be fully focused on the Club World Cup, and getting the biggest results out of it. And then in game 1, he scores a hat trick, or game 2, he scores a hat trick against Porto. And that made the deal even worse. And as Issa Fall mentioned, that he was not very happy. Well, he was happy, but also not very happy, because he knew that the price tag just went up. $7.5 million later, the Crew get their guy. And now we have to ask, is he fit, and what this means for the Crew chances, right? So first off, does anybody fit in Nancy Ball's system? Everybody fits in the Nancy Ball system, because it is notorious for fitting players in regardless of their positional history. You will play in the position that Wilfred Nancy needs you to play, and you will do well, because that's what this system does. Now, Nancy also was interviewed and explained that The reason he was interested in Abou Ali was, one, his pressing efforts are out of this world, which is great because that was Cucho Hernandez's good effort too. Was he loved to press a ball, and his team first mentality. He will do anything for a team, which is again a great fit for Nancy's system. But he's also positionally flexible, right? He can play as a 9, a 7, or an 11 at any given time, which is great because all three of those guys will interchange at any given time. He was a Golden Boot winner from the Egyptian League last year, and he joins up with 2 league titles and an African Champions League to his name. And he slides into a side that is desperate for a striker who can finish chances ever since Cucho Hernandez departed from Spain, or for Spain, and Christian Ramirez swapped coast. While Jason Russell-Rowe has a ton of potential and has not had a terrible year, tallying 7 goals and 1 assist in 25 games, the problem is he's missing his big chances. Yeah, so it's a tweet, or it's a stat found by MLS Gone Wild, who does very well with in-depth stats for this team and for MLS as a whole. But he mentioned that they generate the 4th most non-penalty XG per 90 and have taken the 4th most shots, but underperform their non-penalty XG by 4.9 goals. They're just missing their big chances. They're not putting away the ones that they need to put away, and I think that this is going to be a very good addition for Columbus to fix that, because as they mentioned, he is a fantastic clinical finisher, just like Cucho Hernandez was. So while Nancy mentions that they might play together, Jason Russell-Rowe and Abou Ali, I wouldn't be shocked to see Jason Russell-Rowe drop to a super sub role where he was very good last season. But Abou Ali joins Rossi, Gazdag, and a new signing in Hugo Picard, who is also a wide player, and I think he's going to be a great, great addition, not only to this team, but to MLS as a whole. But what does this mean for the Crew's chances at the Shield, right? So at the top of the East and the race for the Shield are both extremely tight. As of recording on the 28th of July, only 8 points separate the top 8 clubs from the Supporter Shield. The top 4 feel pretty good right now, right? You've got Philly, who are just firing on all cylinders. You got FCC's combo of Evander and Denke. BJ Ball is fantastic in Nashville. Hani and Surge are balling out. San Diego are enjoying life in MLS with their clear newcomer of the year favorite, Andres Dreyer. Vancouver are looking to strengthen the side through Thomas Muller. Miami are getting Rodrigo de Paul. Minnesota played brilliantly in transition and with set pieces to hang in there at the top. But Columbus needed to make a move to stick with the pace, and they absolutely did. Right. Defensively, they're not as strong as the other teams in the top group, right? I think they've got the only other team that's conceded more than them is Miami out of that 8. But they're going to bank on being an attacking menace for the last couple of games and see how far they can push up before the MLS Cup. And maybe, just maybe, they'll have an outside chance at a Shield run. And actually, you know what? Let's do this. Let's finish up with one more confirmed or rumored designated player signing, and it of course goes to our friends in RSL. They are a team that we talked about at the midway point, saying that they were a team that they absolutely desperately needed a number 9 that could finish. They had a whole bunch of talent that came in. My guy Willie Agata not doing so hot, as well as players behind them, right? In Diego Gonçalves, Marschuk, Johnny Russell came in this year, but they're just not scoring many goals. I believe right now they sit on 26 goals. They got a -4 goal differential, which is among one of the lowest in the league. They desperately needed to have an attacker who could put the ball away. And not only did they go out and get one, but they're pushing to get 2. Real Salt Lake officially have signed Brazilian forward Ruan Cruz from Botafogo on loan. He is their new designated player. It includes a $5 million purchase option. He's 24 years old, and he joined Botafogo for $10 million last winter. So this is somebody who's got a very, very high ceiling. He really hasn't done much for Botafogo this season. I mean, he joined in 2025, right? And didn't play in the Club World Cup. He's got a couple of appearances here and there, but hasn't really broken into the starting 11. That being said, he has done really, really well in Bulgaria with Ludogorets, scoring 10 goals in 2024-25 and 11 goals in 2023-24, breaking into the team and having a really, really good showing after debuting for Santos in the Brazilian league. So it's going to be interesting to see how he goes in. He's got some experience and some goals in Europa League qualifying and Champions League qualifying, so playing in that Conference League as well. He has 2 goals in the Conference League against Spartak Trnava and Fenerbahce in some pretty good games there. So very and an assist against Nordjylland, which again, take it for what it will because it's a different team and a different group, but a good start there. And then of course they've also signed Victor Olatunji from Sparta Prague, or working on, I believe, I don't know if it's confirmed just yet, but he is another one. Both guys, very big, very strong, very fast strikers, guys who are going to be a presence up front. This Olatunji definitely feels more of a complementary player to Cruz. He has yet to break 1,000 minutes in his league, I guess, for lack of a better term. He played 23 games for 900 minutes, but scored 7 goals in the 2024-2025 Chance League, which is the Czech league, the Czech first division. So I think that's a comparable level to MLS. I think he can be a good contributing player. But I think the big focus here is on Ruan Cruz coming in on loan, and if he can ball out and do something really special here, because it looks like the loan is just for the end of the year for what I'm seeing. It's really nice to see. It's nice to see them go out and recognize, okay, we've got a problem. We need to capitalize on having Diego Luna around. We need to capitalize on having Goncalves needs to have somebody to play to. We need to find the right answer for these things. And it's not for lack of trying. I mean, you're looking at a handful of players who all have made significant attempts at scoring goals here, and nobody's quite gotten it done. So if they can throw somebody up there who has experience scoring goals in big moments and let Diego Luna play off of them, let Goncalves play off of them, and just start tucking the ball away, I think you're going to see them start climbing the stands just a little bit, because right now they sit in 8th place, right? They've got 26 goals scored. They haven't scored a ton. They are 31 points, but they're only 2 points from the drop. They're not catching the top of the West anytime soon, but get on 2 wins and now you're sitting in 5th with some help, of course. But they're defensively really solid, right? 30 goals against is the reason why they are where they're at. No problem with them defensively. They got to start putting the ball away. So having somebody like Cruz, having somebody like Olatunji, just to give them another option up top for the next 10 games. That's all you need the next 10 games. Get them right. Get yourselves 10 points out of the next 10 games that you wouldn't have gotten without them, and it's a win-win. So it's a big get for RSL to get 2 forwards. The playoff race, again, they're in the playoff race. This hopefully puts them in a better position. And again, that $5 million roster or a $5 million sell-on clause is going to be a very high bar to hit, but we'll see if Cruz can achieve a level that is worth $5 million. But that's going to be it for this episode, guys. Just a quick chat about some of the moves that have been going on recently. Make sure you're following us wherever you get your podcasts. So you know the next time we go live, we are going to have an episode on Monday with John Rollins from Loud and Proud Orlando to chat about the State of the League address from Don Garber. We're going to chat about his comments on the calendar change that likely is coming, the Apple TV deal numbers, potential new competition format, and sponsorship growth. So we're going to chat about all that on Monday. Make sure you're here for that. And then, of course, we've got Leagues Cup going. We'll be chatting about that all summer long. So follow us if you're interested in that. And then follow us on social media so we can interact with you about these takes that we have. But thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS Podcast. See ya.